He is the gift that keeps on giving to Christianity, isn't he? Even when he's not trying. I'm talking about famous atheist Dr. Richard Dawkins. He came on the radio over the weekend to speak about Easter. He was on one of the biggest radio stations here in the UK, LBC, leading Britain's conversation. It's important you remember it's one of the biggest radio stations for later in the video. He asks the host a question that loads of people heard, and I wish he could get a do-over. I used to listen to LBC every day, so it brought back some funny memories. So for old time's sake, I want to discuss one specific thing. I'm not going to talk about Dawkins calling himself a cultural Christian. A cultural Christian is someone who doesn't believe Christianity, but they like the fringe things in it. I'm not going to cover him talking about loving hymns and cathedrals and other Christian things. I'm not going to talk about him saying the UK is a cultural Christian land. I spoke about that in a recent video on the silly reason Andrew Tate left Christianity. I'm not even going to talk about him saying Christianity is better than Islam and how if given the choice, he'd choose Christianity every single time. I want to talk about part of this convo because it shows why Christianity is declining in parts of the West, and I'll explain the simple things we must do to turn things around. Listen to the host of the show as she talks about her own faith in Jesus.
I see where you come from. I like the phrase, you're a cultural Christian. I think I'm a bit more than a cultural Christian, although, it does, my belief waxes and wanes.
There are millions of people in the world who feel like this woman, and it breaks my heart because with a few little tweaks, their faith would be so much stronger. I'm going to jump ahead to Dawkins' response. He talks about other things, but goes back to what she said about being more than a cultural Christian.
Yes, but I must emphasise that I think that the things that Christians believe are actually nonsense.
Now, I'm aware this is a radio station and not everything gets said, but before I continue, the reason I'm stopping here is because this happens all the time. This happens in everyday life when the radios are not there. Dr. Dawkins can believe anything he likes, like we all can. So when he said he believes Christianity is nonsense, this is being broadcast across the UK with no response. So loads of Christians like this woman hear this conversation and think, yeah, it's right to stay in and out because Christianity is nonsense. When belief in God is the position of power, not atheism. We should be confident as people who believe in God. There is so much evidence on our side that favours our position. I talked about this in my last video, where the funniest man in the world proves God exists to Joe Rogan. But all you must do when someone says something like Dawkins did is ask why. Why is Christianity nonsense? Dr. Dawkins drips with confidence when criticizing Christianity. But when you have to explain why, your reasons are open for criticism. This is why you should ask why to questions and claims made by people. This method got popularized in recent years by apologist Greg Koukl in his book Tactics. Asking why now gives you the chance to see if the reasoning is nonsense or if it's something worth considering. As you will see in a moment, the reason Dr. Dawkins gives isn't the best, but too many Christians are in situations like this and think it takes much to respond when it doesn't. I'm watching this interview, feeling so sorry for this woman and every other person like her. She'll stay in that cycle when it's so easy to get committed with only a little work with the right guidance. So listen now to why Dawkins says believing in Christianity is nonsense.
When you say you waver, I wanted to ask you, do you actually believe that Jesus had a virgin for a mother? Do you actually believe he rose from the dead? I suspect you probably don't.
You must believe Jesus was born from the Virgin Mary and rose from the dead to be a Christian. She does, but I'll show you what she says as a response in a moment. Nobody likes to feel embarrassed, and the truth is, because atheists like Dawkins mock these kind of beliefs, nobody wants to get laughed at. Staying in the crowd seems like the right thing to do, but with matters of this much importance, we must follow the truth. But all she would have to say was, yes, Mary gave birth to Jesus, and he rose from the dead. Other than rejecting the supernatural and assuming naturalism, why shouldn't I? Because that's all Dawkins is doing by asking those questions. He is removing the supernatural and asking, do you really believe in the supernatural? That's called begging the question. Anyone who believes in God believes in the supernatural. If you are not open to the supernatural, no amount of evidence could convince you of it. I discussed this in my video when a man as smart as Dawkins, if not more, admits no evidence would convince him God is real. You cannot reason with an atheist like that. But let's listen to the host's response.
Weirdly, I was just 3 weeks ago at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, where the Christians believe that Christ was crucified, or there was the tomb, or the Gethsemane was just there, and Golgotha was there. And I have to admit that there is a real force. I mean, it feels like the fulcrum of three world religions. It really does. And Christianity is palpable there. The place pulses with Christianity. I don't know whether it made me believe the Bible anymore, but I certainly felt that Jesus was a historical figure. Yes, I did believe that.
Well,
am I wrong to think that?
Do you see how by her asking that question at the end, he was saying yes? It shows you an example of when you ask certain questions, it helps. She explained an experience she had in Jerusalem. There's nothing wrong with experiences. They are powerful testimonies. We all have them. They're a big part of many people's faith. But it's not the only thing. The thing with experiences is they run out and everyone has them. But Richard Dawkins goes back to his original line of questions.
That's quite different. But do you believe that his mother was a virgin?
Well, I mean, maybe that was a mistranslation of... Well, that's biologically impossible, isn't it?
Of course it is, yes.
She now says it's biologically impossible. She is taking on the belief system of the atheist when she doesn't have to. There is nothing that says we must only believe in naturalism. It's sad that she desperately looks for an answer and then says it might be a mistranslation. It's not. The New Testament is clear. It says Mary was not touched until Jesus was born. This looks like a car race between a Ferrari and a Ford, when in fact one or two questions asked the right way by a Christian would show this is not a mismatch. All anyone in this situation must ask is, if God is real, why would a virgin birth or resurrection be impossible? And if the person is honest, they would have to say it's not. The reason I believe in anything supernatural in the Bible is because I believe God exists. And if he exists, these things are more than possible. Let's talk about why God exists if you like. And at that point, you can give one of the reasons you believe God exists. One of the best ways to prove God exists that almost anyone understands and is easy to explain is what I talk about in this video. Famous atheist Joe Rogan had to admit this is a powerful argument for God, because it is. God bless.